The Galactic Empire had thought the death of Vlad II, Dracula's son, would be the end of his bloodline's dark legacy. After all, the ruthless execution of an heir should have extinguished any hope of revenge. But they had underestimated the power of Dracula himself. Aboard the sleek, hidden starship Nocturna, Dracula stood at the helm, staring out at the endless void of space. The stars, distant and cold, held no warmth for him. His mind, a labyrinth of ancient memories and eternal ambition, burned with the memory of his son's brutal execution. They had thought the legends were just that, stories, myths. But Dracula was no mere monster. He was a king, a warlord, an immortal force of nature. His bloodline was a weapon, and he would see it restored. He had bided his time, watching the Empire from the shadows, studying their weaknesses. Now, with his son's blood spilled, the time had come to strike. Not out of blind rage, but out of a need for justice, for restoration. And in that pursuit he would not stand alone. Captain Elena Vargas stood beside him in the command center of the Nocturna. A former diplomat turned strategist, she had spent the better part of her career navigating the delicate dance of galactic politics. Her hair, dark and tightly pulled back, glimmered faintly under the low light of the room. Her sharp eyes studied the galaxy map on the display in front of her, calculating their next move. "I still don't understand why you want to do this the hard way," Elena said, her voice a mix of exhaustion and disbelief. "There are alternatives. We can still negotiate with the Empire. They're powerful, but they're not invincible. Why not leverage your reputation, your history, to gain access?" Dracula's lips curled into a smile that showed just a hint of fong. "Because they think they've already won," he replied, his deep voice resonating with an ancient bitterness. "The death of my son was meant to erase my bloodline from history. But they underestimated one thing, my adaptability. I am no longer just a vampire they fear. I am a symbol, a legend, and the time for subtlety has passed." Elena exhaled slowly. She knew that look in his eyes. There was no dissuading Dracula once he set his mind to something. Her job was to make sure he didn't burn everything to the ground before they had a chance to implement their plan. "Then we're going in guns blazing," she said with a sigh, already typing commands into the console to begin preparations. "I'll start gathering the team." As the ship's engines hummed to life, Dr. Malik Patel entered the room. A brilliant xenobiologist and tech expert, Malik had joined the crew not out of loyalty to Dracula, but because of his sheer curiosity. The intricacies of alien technology and biology fascinated him, and Dracula's bloodline presented an opportunity for him to unravel mysteries centuries old. Still, working with a creature as powerful and unpredictable as Dracula came with its risks. "You're sure about this, right?" Malik asked, his voice tinged with concern. "I mean, no offense, but you're talking about a full-scale assault on the Empire. We don't even know where they're keeping Vlad's remains. This is going to be messy." "I don't care about the mess," Dracula said, his gaze unflinching. "The Empire took what was mine. Now I take back what is rightfully ours." Malik stared at Dracula for a moment, weighing his words. "I'll work out the details of how we're getting past their defenses. But I'll need time to study their systems and your blood. There are still things I don't fully understand. You have the time you need, but understand this." "We will not fail," Dracula replied, his voice low but commanding. Just then, the doors to the command center slid open with a soft hiss, and Arya Moon entered, her footsteps light and deliberate. The idealist, the dreamer, the artist. The one who could always see the bigger picture even when the details were murky. She had joined the team not out of a desire for revenge, but because she saw in Dracula's quest an opportunity to shape a new narrative, to craft a story that would change the course of history. "I'm ready," Arya said, her voice filled with quiet confidence. Her long, silver hair cascaded around her shoulders, and her eyes, always gleaming with creativity, locked onto Dracula. "The propaganda's already in motion. I've been spreading the word about the Empire's crimes, using their own media against them. It's time to turn the tables." Elena raised an eyebrow. You're talking about turning Dracula into a symbol. You realize the risks involved, right? Arya grinned. Risks are my specialty. Imagine Dracula, not as a monster, but as the rightful ruler, the hero of the people. The galaxy already fears him, but it's time for them to start believing in him again. Dracula considered this, a flicker of curiosity passing through his ancient eyes. You're certain they'll listen? They'll listen, Arya said, because they have no choice. Fear isn't just about what's seen. It's about what's believed. As the conversation settled, the last member of the team arrived. Dex Wildcard Carter, the rogue who had once made a name for himself stealing from the most powerful criminals in the galaxy, now found himself in the service of Dracula. If there was one thing Dex understood, it was chaos, and that was exactly what Dracula needed. Whether it was breaking into a heavily fortified compound or creating a diversion at the right moment, Dex thrived in the unexpected. "What's the plan?" Dex asked with his usual smirk, leaning casually against the doorframe. He didn't look like someone preparing to infiltrate the heart of the Empire. He looked like someone about to grab a drink. "We're taking the fight to them," Elena said, turning to face him. "Dracula wants justice, and we're going to get it." Dex's grin widened. "Now that sounds like a good time. When do we start?" Dracula's gaze swept over his team. The moment had come. No more waiting. No more whispers in the shadows. His son's death had opened a wound that would never heal, but it had also given him the strength to fight in a way he never had before. His bloodline would not die with him, and if the Empire wanted war, they would get more than they bargained for. "Now," Dracula said, his voice filled with finality. "We start now." The Nocturna glided silently through the vast expanse of space, its sleek black hull barely visible against the starry backdrop. The crew, each driven by their own purpose, stood united by a singular goal: revenge for the murder of Vlad II, Dracula's son, and the restoration of Dracula's bloodline. But as they neared the Galactic Empire's stronghold, the weight of their mission became increasingly apparent. Captain Elena Vargas stood at the helm of the Nocturna, her fingers dancing over the controls as she navigated the ship through the outer rim of the Empire's borders. "We're almost there," she said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "But this is no longer just about Dracula. It's about sending a message." Behind her, Arya Moon stood with a faraway look in her eyes, her mind already working on the next phase of the operation. She could hear the echoes of her latest propaganda spreading across the galaxy, news of Dracula's return, of his quest for justice, of the bloodline that could not be erased. The stories were gaining traction. Soon, even the Empire would have no choice but to recognize Dracula as a symbol of resistance. "Your message is already being heard," Arya replied, her voice quiet but determined. "People are starting to believe again. They're waking up." Dracula, standing near the observation window, watched the swirling mass of stars with a brooding intensity. The message won't matter until the Empire understands the consequences of their actions. They think they can kill us with a single blow, but they have only awakened something far older, far darker than they can comprehend. His voice carried the weight of centuries, his eyes locked on the distant planet that would soon become the stage for their confrontation. The heart of the Empire, the place where Vlad II had been executed, awaited them. It was a fortress of steel, both literal and metaphorical, a monument to their arrogance. "Then it's time to tear that monument down," Dr. Malik Patel said, his fingers flying over his portable console. He was the team's problem solver, the one who always found the cracks in the system. His mind had already been working overtime, analyzing Empire defenses and coming up with a plan to slip past their formidable security. But even Malik couldn't deny the magnitude of what they were about to do. "We need to infiltrate from within," Malik continued. "I've been analyzing the Empire's security grids, and I've got a way in. But we'll need to be quick. The Empire doesn't take kindly to intruders." Elena nodded, giving him the go-ahead. "We'll need a distraction. Something big. Something that'll draw their attention while we slip under the radar." "Leave that to me," Dex, wild card, Carter said with a grin, his voice laced with mischief. I'm excellent at creating chaos. Just let me know when to light the fuse. The team gathered in the ship's war room, the cold glow of the hollow map casting long shadows on their faces. Dracula was silent, his mind already drifting to his ultimate goal, finding his son's remains and ensuring that his bloodline could rise again. Malik, what's the plan? Elena asked, bringing the focus back to their mission. Malik tapped his console, and the holographic display shifted, showing a detailed map of the Empire's capital, a sprawling metropolis surrounded by layers of defense. The Empire's main stronghold is impenetrable by standard means, Malik explained. But there's an underground transport system that connects key government facilities to the rest of the city. We'll use that route to get in close. From there, we can access the central command center where Vlad II's remains are being held. And what about the guards? Arya asked, her fingers already sketching out a design for the propaganda she would need to spread once they were inside. Empire guards are elite, Malik acknowledged. But we have something they don't, our adaptability. I've got some tricks up my sleeve that will let us get by without raising too much suspicion. We just need to stay under their radar until we reach the main vault. Dracula turned from the window, his eyes gleaming with resolve. The vault is where we'll find the heart of the Empire's arrogance. But we need to do more than just recover my son's remains. We need to make them understand that they have awoken something ancient, something they cannot destroy. Elena gave him a long look, her expression unreadable. You're talking about a war. The Empire won't just sit back and let you walk out with what's yours. Dracula smiled, his fangs gleaming in the dim light. Then they will learn that no empire is invincible. As the ship descended into the Empire's capital, the team readied themselves for the mission ahead. Arya Moon was already working on ways to manipulate the media channels once they were inside, her mind buzzing with ideas for rallying the people to their cause. Dracula's plan wasn't just to recover his son's remains. It was to reignite the fire of rebellion in the hearts of those who had forgotten the power of the Dracula bloodline. The Nocturna landed with a soft thud in an alley just outside the Empire's main district. From there, it was a short walk to the entrance of the underground transport system. The team donned their disguises, dark clothing and Empire-issued uniforms that would blend them into the crowds of the city. Everyone knows their role? Elena asked, her voice low and commanding. We move quickly, stay quiet, and don't engage unless we have to. Remember, we're here for a purpose. Nothing else matters. Dex cracked his knuckles and flashed a grin. Let's get this party started. With that, the team moved out, disappearing into the shadows of the city. The Empire had no idea what was coming for them. They thought they had killed Dracula's bloodline, but they were about to learn just how dangerous an idea could be when it had the will of an immortal king behind it. The team moved like shadows through the Empire's capital, their steps silent on the cold, polished stone streets. The Empire's metropolis gleamed with ostentatious wealth, a city of towering spires and gleaming structures, each one a testament to their supposed superiority. But beneath the surface, the rot of corruption and arrogance festered. Dracula could feel it, just as he could feel the pulsating, throbbing energy of the Empire's heart beating ever closer. The underground transport system was as much a labyrinth as it was a lifeline, a sprawling network of tunnels and hidden passageways that led directly to the heart of the Empire's security. As they passed through the darkened hallways, the only sounds were the quiet hum of their movement and the faint echo of footsteps far above, unaware of the danger lurking below. Dex wild card, Carter led the way, his movements fluid and confident, as if he were strolling through his own backyard. His rogue nature made him perfect for this kind of operation, unpredictable, resourceful, and, most importantly, able to think on his feet when the situation inevitably went south. I've got a bad feeling about this, he muttered, glancing over his shoulder at the others. You always have a bad feeling about something, Dr. Malik Patel responded, his voice dry with sarcasm. He adjusted the holographic readout on his wrist, confirming their location. "We're fine. This way." Malik was, as always, the voice of reason, or at least the one who kept the group focused on their objectives. The tech expert had been indispensable in navigating the Empire's security systems, hacking into their comms network to disable cameras and reroute patrols. He had done his homework, but even he knew they were walking a fine line. One wrong move and they would be swarmed by Empire soldiers. "I can feel it, Malik," Dex insisted, his voice a low murmur. "The moment we get near the vault, it's going to get real messy. That's why we're being careful," Elena Vargas interjected, her voice steady and commanding. "We're in their territory now. No more mistakes." Dracula, always the enigma, said nothing, his dark eyes scanning the shadows ahead. He wasn't concerned with the dangers ahead. He had lived through far worse. His only concern now was the reclamation of what was rightfully his bloodline, his legacy. The Empire had made the mistake of thinking his family's power had been eradicated, but Dracula was not a mere shadow. He was a king, and kings did not vanish. They returned. The team reached an old, decaying door at the end of a long, narrow hallway. Malik's eyes flickered to his wrist console, confirming the signal. This was it. The entrance to the vault, where the Empire had stored Vlad II's remains, hidden away behind layers of security. But even with all their preparation, there was no telling what waited behind that door. "All right," Elena said, signaling to the team. "Stay alert. This is where things get serious." Dex cracked his knuckles, grinning. "Finally, let's break some things." He reached forward and disabled the lock, the door hissing open with a soft sound. The vault beyond was dimly lit, its metallic walls gleaming with cold efficiency. Inside, the remains of Vlad II rested on an obsidian slab, surrounded by high-tech containment devices, symbols of the Empire's arrogance. They had thought this was a final burial, the ultimate closure on the Dracula legacy. They were wrong. Elena signaled for the team to enter. "Malik, we don't have much time. Get to work." As Malik moved to disable the containment systems, Dracula's eyes flickered over to the remains. For a moment his gaze softened, just a flicker of emotion in the otherwise stoic, immortal face. His son's remains, preserved in cold metal, had been the catalyst for this mission. But there was more to it now. This wasn't just about vengeance. It was about returning to the power and influence his bloodline had once held. He had waited long enough. "Is it done?" Dracula asked, his voice breaking the silence. Malik paused, his brow furrowed. "Almost. These systems are more complicated than I anticipated. I need another minute." A low sound echoed from above, footsteps sharp and deliberate. Someone was coming. Elena's eyes narrowed, signaling the team to prepare for a confrontation. "We're not alone," she muttered. Arya Moon stepped forward, her voice calm but filled with urgency. "We need to move now. If we're caught—" Before she could finish, the sound of alarms ripped through the air, shrill and deafening. The vault's emergency security systems had been triggered. "They've found us," Malik said, his voice grim. "Get ready." Dracula stepped forward, his gaze locked on the vault's entrance. His ancient, immortal strength surged to the surface, his muscles tensing as if preparing for battle. The Empire had underestimated him, but now they would pay the price for their arrogance. "Let them come," Dracula said, his voice low and steady, filled with quiet menace. "They will learn what it means to challenge a king." Elena raised her hand, signaling the team to fall back. "We'll hold them off long enough for Malik to finish. Everyone, get ready." A hiss sounded from the hallway, followed by the unmistakable sound of blasters being primed. The Empire's elite guards were closing in, their weapons aimed and ready to fire. "This is going to be messy," Dex muttered, a wicked grin forming on his face. "But that's how I like it." And then the doors slammed open, and the Empire's soldiers poured in, their armor gleaming in the dim light. It was time for Dracula to show them the price of underestimating humanity's adaptability. Not just Dracula, but all of them. A king, a problem solver, a dreamer, and a wild card. Together, they would bring the Empire to its knees. The air in the vault grew thick with tension as Empire soldiers flooded into the room, their boots clattering against the metal floor, their blasters raised and aimed at the team. But Dracula stood unfazed, the ancient weight of his bloodline settling over him like a cloak. For a moment he simply watched, his eyes narrowing with predatory calm, calculating every possible outcome. "Do not mistake my patience for weakness," Dracula muttered, his voice low but laced with a regal authority that echoed through the vault. "You are trespassers, but it is I who have been wronged." The Empire's soldiers hesitated for only a split second, but it was enough. That moment of doubt was all Dracula needed. He moved with inhuman speed, his body blurring as he surged toward the first soldier. A single, fluid motion saw his hand wrapped around the soldier's throat, lifting him off the ground with terrifying ease. The others hesitated, unsure whether to fire or retreat. But Dracula was already on the move again, a blur of dark fury, knocking soldiers aside with brutal efficiency. He didn't care about the Empire's weapons or their numbers. They were insignificant. "Fall back!" Elena shouted, pulling the rest of the team into action. "Malik, are you ready yet?" Malik, his fingers flying over his wrist console, cursed under his breath as he worked furiously to disable the Empire's security locks. "Almost just need a few more seconds." Dex let out a laugh, his hand darting to his belt, pulling out a small grenade-like device. "Well, let's make sure we've got those few seconds, yeah?" Before anyone could stop him, Dex hurled the device at a cluster of soldiers near the vault entrance. It detonated with a blinding flash of light and a deafening boom, sending the guards stumbling back. The air filled with the acrid smell of ionized metal and burning circuits. The team rushed into the gap, taking advantage of the chaos Dex had caused. Arya, her face set with grim determination, flicked a switch on her wrist communicator, broadcasting a message to the entire Empire's central network. "This is the voice of Dracula." Her voice echoed to the capital's airwaves, clear and unwavering. "For too long, you've hidden in the shadows, thinking yourselves invincible. But I am no shadow. I am the darkness that returns to claim what is mine. I am the bloodline you thought you destroyed. This is the beginning of your end." Her message would reverberate across the Empire, a call to the oppressed, the downtrodden, those who had been silenced under the Empire's rule. Dracula had always known that his legacy was more than blood. It was an idea, a force that could rise again when the time was right. "Nice touch, Arya," Elena said, a rare grin crossing her face as she fired her blaster at a group of incoming guards. "Let's see how the Empire likes hearing that." Dracula, now standing at the center of the vault, was surrounded by fallen soldiers. His presence was like an unholy storm, a force of nature that nothing could hope to contain. He was a king, and kings did not bow to empires. Malik's fingers hovered over his console, the final lock on the containment system now deactivated. "We're in. It's time." With a resounding hiss, the containment barriers around Vlad Tus remains powered down, revealing the mummified body on the obsidian slab. Dracula's eyes softened, a flicker of emotion passing through his cold exterior. He stepped forward, his hands gently reaching for the remains of his son. "At last," Dracula whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "your death will not be in vain. The Empire will pay for what they've done." But the moment of peace was fleeting. A cold, mechanical voice echoed through the vault, cutting through the chaos. Intruders detected. Security lockdown initiated. The vault doors slammed shut with a deafening clang, trapping the team inside. The walls of the room began to shift, revealing hidden turrets embedded in the ceiling, locking onto the team's position. High-powered lasers hummed to life, their deadly beams crisscrossing in the air like strands of light. "We've got company," Elena shouted, pulling the team into a defensive position. "Malik, get us out of here." "I'm working on it," Malik responded, his fingers flying over his console again, trying to find a way to override the lockdown. The lasers fired and the team scattered, ducking behind pillars and crates for cover. Dex, ever the wild card, was already leaping over the edge of a table, rolling into a crouch and returning fire. He was a blur of movement, his shots quick and deadly, taking down several of the incoming turrets. But the lasers just kept coming, their intensity growing. "Keep moving," Arya shouted, grabbing a nearby crate and tossing it in front of the team to shield them. "We've got to disable the system, or we're going to be incinerated." Dracula, meanwhile, stood unfazed in the center of the room. He had lived through worse than this. The lasers ricocheted off his form, leaving barely a scratch. With a growl, he raised his hand and summoned the power of his bloodline, a dark energy crackling around him. His fist clenched, and in an instant, the lasers blinked out, the turrets sparking and exploding in a flurry of sparks and flames. "Done," Dracula said, his voice filled with quiet satisfaction. The room fell silent except for the crackling of the last sparks from the destroyed turrets. The team, still on edge, peered out from behind their cover, ensuring no more surprises were waiting. "That was impressive," Malik admitted, wiping sweat from his brow. "You really are as dangerous as they say." Dracula merely nodded, his focus still on the remains of his son. Elena gave a quick scan of the room, confirming that the immediate danger had passed. "We've got what we came for," she said, giving Dracula a respectful nod. "Now, let's get out of here." With a final, lingering glance at his son's remains, Dracula stood tall, his resolve unwavering. "We leave the Empire with a message. Let them know that the true power of the galaxy has awakened." The team moved quickly, retracing their steps to the transport system. As they emerged from the vault, they were met by the sight of the Empire's capital, now descending into chaos. Aria's broadcast had done its work. The people were rising, and the Empire's walls were crumbling from within. As the Nocturna lifted off, leaving the city behind, Dracula stood at the window, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "The Empire may have thought they could end us," he murmured, "but humanity will always find a way to adapt, to rise, and